Hey, what's up guys? It's me, Anthony, here to give you guys another movie review. This time it is for the fourth installment in the Thor franchise and the latest MCU film, Thor, Love and Thunder. After teaming up with the Guardians in the Galaxy and losing his dad bod, Thor and his friend Korg find out that there is a god killer on the loose and they must stop him before he destroys every god in the universe. Along the way, Jane Foster becomes Thor. Thus, an adventure ensues like none other because this is one of the weirdest, craziest, over-the-top MCU films that I've seen in a long time. Matter of fact, since Thor Ragnarok. And it's really funny because I feel like the Thor films have shifted in tone since the first two films. The first two films I felt like went with the tone of the Avenger lead up that they were going for. The first Thor film, you can see him, this very fits nicely into the first Avenger film, Thor Dark World. Say what you will about that film, but it fit in the whole timeline and the feel and the vibe of leading up to the Avengers Ultron film. And then we got Thor Ragnarok, which was really insane and over the top. We got a new director directing the Thor films in Taika Waititi. He's kind of like a James Gunn in a sense where he just, he's just that kind of director where he's like very over the top and he wants to throw his vision onto the screen. And I don't want to go too much into, how I feel about Thor Ragnarok because I have a video coming out pretty soon where we're going to discuss all that. But Thor, Love and Thunder, the fourth film in the Thor franchise, which is kind of weird to say that Thor, out of all the Avengers, is the one that has the most sequels. But let's get into this movie because there's a lot to discuss. Because if you've been on the internet lately, this movie has been very divisive. And after watching this film, I'm kind of confused why. Because for me, I'm of two minds when it comes to MCU criticism. Of course, there's multiple different opinions and ways to go about criticizing the MCU, but I feel like for the most part, when I see stuff online, people are just either like, I am an MCU fan, or I was an MCU fan and now I hate the MCU, or it's the opposite where it's like, I was an MCU fan and I love it even more. I can't wait for the next big event. And for those people that, are getting tired of the MCU and, say that the Phase 4 has been boring and it sucks for you, all I have to say is that's okay. But I will say that I feel like, the hate that the Phase 4 is getting it's kind of weird. It's kind of unique in a sense. I kind of enjoy it because it's really funny to see all these people that were Marvel fans or are not really Marvel fans at all, and they're just like getting a kick out of the supposed hate that Phase 4 is getting. Whatever. It doesn't matter. It's a movie franchise. These things could never exist and you wouldn't even lose any sleep. But before I get too in the weeds of the criticism with this film, I enjoyed this film. I had my little gripes with it here and there, but overall I found myself really enjoying this film. And now after watching Thor, Love and Thunder, I think that Thor is probably one of my favorite MCU movies, the movie franchises, I guess, because Ragnarok, I like that. I like the first Thor film. I know a lot of people are mixed on that one. Thor the Dark World we'll pretend that doesn't exist. But even that film had some elements that were really cool. And I just like the evolution of the Thor movies. And this one is no different. You get a little mini recap in the beginning of the film about, all of Thor's escapades and everything. But there's just little tiny things here sprinkled in, some Easter eggs from past movies, not even Thor movies. And then some Easter eggs that were from Thor films before, the last one in particular, with a certain celebrity that shows up again. And he brings a couple of friends, and that was great. That was so good. But let's talk about the characters in here, and we'll start with the big one because this movie advertised as Natalie Portman's coming back to the Thor franchise as the mighty Thor. Jane Foster is here and she got the muscles. She got some muscles. You know, I was debating, you know, I kind of got roasted on Twitter a little bit that, you know, Natalie Portman's small arms got giant, and I thought that was CGI. I still think it's CGI. But in all honesty, I was, you know, I'm hoping it's CGI, because if Natalie Portman has that big of biceps, I'm officially even more terrified of her than I was when she did the Natalie Portman rap. Because you listen to that, your mindset of Natalie Portman has changed. I thought her character was pretty decent in this film. Not really my favorite, if I have to say. I think they kind of like rushed her character, and they kind of did the whole, like, you know, revealing of Jane Foster as the mighty Thor a little bit of a disservice, in my opinion. Wish that they did a little bit more with her character, you know, developing her character, you know, fleshing it out a little bit more. But for the most part, I mean, Natalie Portman, she knocks it out of the park. She does an amazing job as the mighty Thor, with this new power that she's got, and it kind of feels like she never left the MCU, even though that this film really makes it apparent that, you know, she's been gone for a while, and they got to catch you up of what has been happening since, you know, she's left Thor. Thor and her have, you know, broken up. Valkyrie is back in this film, and she's just, you know, up to her same old antics, you know, being Valkyrie, being a little snark, you know, being the queen of Asgard. But yeah, she's just there. I did see a lot of criticism about her character in particular not being utilized that much. I don't really see it. I don't see that criticism, because she's in pretty much the entire film. First 30 minutes, you know, is just building up some other characters, which we're going to talk about. But the rest of the film, she's in there all the time, and except for the ending. But the ending's like, you know, 30 minutes of the final fight and everything. Yeah, you know, I thought we got a lot of Valkyrie. Maybe not as much character development, further character development as I would like, but she's in there, so if you like Valkyrie, you'll be excited. The Guardians of the Galaxy is probably the one that you're kind of gonna be disappointed, because they are barely in this film. And I was kind of, you know, sad, because the way they set it up from the last film that we had with Thor and the Guardians of the Galaxy meeting up, you know, traveling together, I thought that we're gonna have a bigger adventure, but not really. They explain what has happened between that time that they, you know, first got together and to now. But I felt like I was kind of gypped on some really cool story and scene moments that I could have got with the group, but you know, you can't win them all. Chris Hemsworth is back as Thor, and you know, I can't really say anything more, because if you've seen Thor, you know, his evolution as Thor throughout all these films, all the MC films, the Avenger films, the Thor films, every other film that he's been in, you already know how Chris Hemsworth is as Thor. He is Thor now. When people think of Thor, they're going to think of Chris Hemsworth, and he does another amazing job in this film. But the character that I want to talk about is Christian Bale's character as the God Slayer. Wow. The MCU gets, you know, a lot of deserved criticism for its lackluster villains that it has in each of its, like, you know, tiny films that it has, you know, Captain America films, you know, all those little tiny films. The Avenger films are usually where we get the big baddie villain, and it's rare where we get a villain in a standalone superhero film that is as, you know, menacing, compelling, and terrifying as we do with Christian Bale's character here, the God Slayer. I was just really, really impressed. I was really in awe of Christian Bale's performance, the storytelling of his character. It's very simple, you know, it's just one guy has a problem, and he's like, you know, I just wanted some help, and he doesn't get that help, and it's just the results of that feeling of just desperateness and believing in something when in reality it doesn't really matter. And you can go about that meaning of that story or that moral a lot of different ways. You can go really deep with it, or you could just be like on the surface level and just be like, yeah, well, that really sucks. I kind of sympathize with this. Christian Bale was amazing. I loved every scene that he was in. He's scary. And I think the Thor films have been kind of knocking it apart with the villains that they've had. I mean, we have the Kingslayer, and then we had Thor's sister, back in the last one. And I think those two villains have been pretty top tier in MCU, in my opinion. You know, let me know in the comments down below, who do you think is the biggest, baddest MCU villain that we've had so far? I think it's probably going to be Thanos, but probably who's the second best. Now, as far as the film itself, the way it paced, the way it was edited, the way, you know, acted, all that stuff, I liked it. I thought it was really good. So the only thing that I probably have like an issue, or there's like some nitpicks with, I kind of mentioned them a little bit. It's just some character development issues, particularly with Jane's character. I didn't really think they did a really good job with developing that. But also the beginning of the film, I was kind of worried because I was kind of like, this doesn't feel right. It looks kind of weird. It felt kind of weird. There were some interactions with characters where they're using the CGI, and the CGI looked kind of off there. And the storytelling, sadly, in the beginning, like the first, I would say 25 to 30 minutes, was very, very choppy. They're throwing stuff together here. And sadly, there's a lot of Jane's storyline that is a result of that choppy editing. But like I said, after that 30-minute mark, the film finds its footing, and, you know, it goes with it, and it knows what kind of film it wants to be, and it just grows up from there. For me, the most exciting thing about this film is the ending. So if you don't know anything, yeah, I'm not going to spoil, you know, I'm not going to spoil anything. But if you haven't seen the film, you know what I'm talking about. The possibilities with what they're going to do with the Thor character is endless to me. I think it's really cool that Chris Hemsworth is, out of all the Avengers, you know, he's there. He's there, and he's continuing to make movies. Thor 5 is a big possibility to be happening, particularly what happens at the end of this film. It's just kind of wild to me that we're in the 4th Thor film, and the possibility of us getting even more Thor films is very, very likely. So guys, overall, I thought that Thor Love and Thunder was a really, really fun time. I really enjoyed this film. I love the Thor movies. Like I said, the Thor films are becoming one of my favorites in the MCU. I think if you're not a fan of the Thor films, like if you didn't like Thor 1, like I said, Thor 2, we don't even talk about. Unanimously, nobody really likes that film. But if you're not even a fan of Ragnarok, which I see a lot of people that watch these MCU films are not a fan of, you're not gonna like this movie. It's the same tone as Ragnarok, but just like amped up to 1,000. So like I said, if you're not into Thor Ragnarok or Thor films or MCU films, why are you even watching this? But particularly if you didn't like Ragnarok, you're not gonna probably like this. Well guys, let me know what you think in the comments down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and remember guys, keep watching movies.